Okay, folks, we are coming to the wind down of this particular edition of the Freedom Conference 2008, the spring edition, the Truth and Freedom Conference. You've heard a lot of speakers on a lot of different topics, and I know some of this information, it's going to take you a little while to digest. And the whole idea here is one of the reasons why Paymon has put together the speakers that he has is because some of the speakers are very skilled at putting their information together in a palatable and easily digestible manner. And sometimes it's not easy to do, especially given the severity and the import of some of the material to deal with. Well, the next speaker here is one of a team of three young men who have figured out a way to push all of the right buttons and reach an entire generation of people that folks like us just haven't up to this point been able to reach. I mean, let's face it, folks, we're in the process of passing this country, passing the torch to the new generation. And a lot of these kids, you know, we don't speak the language. You know, the separation of the generations, you know. We need to be able to bridge this gap. Well, our next speaker, along with two other young guys, have done exactly that, and their project has been seen by millions and millions and millions of people all over the world, has opened up millions of eyes, and now has been a major contribution to a growing movement that is demanding change. And I think that our next speaker here deserves a huge round of applause for their efforts, and hopefully they'll be able to continue their efforts. Folks, let's have a big round of applause for Jason Bermas.
Thanks, everybody. Before I get started, and I'm going to show you some clips that haven't made either movies. I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen Loose Change 2nd Edition. Hopefully most of you have seen the final cut. We're going to play a chapter from that too. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about activism. Really, this information is out there to make you and me active, to get out into street actions, to become groups like truthaction.org, lonelantern.org. I'm a huge fan of wearechange.org. If you're here in LA, LA Truth, 9/11 Truth is right down there. You can do something. You know, I was out here in California a few weeks ago, and I took part in the last Tea Party in San Francisco. And, you know, to me, it's all about talking to the person on the street that has no idea about this information. And there are a ton of different tools to do so. And I'm going to show a couple of those to you right now. And it's all in technology, in my opinion. I use my cell phone. Most cell phones, either as a Sidekick or your iPod, you can now put video on there. So when I start talking about 9/11 or, you know, the current situation of government, I usually try to find a common ground with somebody. You know, it's pretty easy after 5 or 10 minutes of discussing with somebody if they fall for the false left-right paradigm, if they consider themselves a conservative or a liberal. And, you know, if I'm talking to somebody who considers themselves a conservative, I might bring up, well, what do you think about the border issue? And of course, they're fired up about the border issue. And then I bring in, well, what do you think about the North American Union? And they're like, what North American Union? And then you bring in the Trans-Texas Corridor. And what I try to do is I try to build, you know, a relationship with them prior to shocking them. You know, it's just what I do. I'll be on a plane and I'll be next to some Republican and he'll tell me what he's doing and, you know, what the policy is going to be. And then I'll whip out my cell phone and I'll show him Building 7 going down. And he usually, 9 times out of 10, they go, what's that, a Vegas controlled demolition? And I go, actually, no, it's the third building that fell down on 9/11. They said, what third building? And I explained that, you know, this 47-story skyscraper that would dominate most city skylines, especially, you know, you're talking to somebody, unless you live in New York, 47 stories is it, folks. I mean, that's about as big as it gets. And I explained that, you know, this housed the largest Secret Service office in the world. It housed the largest CIA base outside of Washington, D.C. It housed the Department of Defense. It housed the Securities and Exchange Commission, the IRS. And all of a sudden, you know, things start changing for them. They'll take a DVD from me, and hopefully they'll go and watch it, and they'll do their own investigation, because I don't expect you to believe anything that I say up here. I hope you do your own investigation. You go check out these mainstream media sources. You know, one of the things that's made us very successful is that we use the mainstream media against itself. It contradicts itself constantly. And like I said, I'm going to show you a few things that are not in the film, either film, that I'm actually working on a new project right now. And I want to go over some of the things that aren't really discussed a lot. And one of those things are the Air Force One threat and the drills that were going on that morning. I'm going to play the War Games chapter for you in a couple minutes after I go through these. But really, the War Games were the operational arm of this attack, in my opinion. It's no coincidence to me that the NRO is running a drill at 8:45 in the morning out of Chantilly, Virginia, with a team from the CIA and John Fulton of ramming a plane into a building. When we were able to acquire the NORAD tapes after a lot of hard work, I mean, we corresponded with NORAD for over a year and finally got the tapes that Michael Bronner of Vanity Fair played maybe 8 minutes of. Well, there's 144 hours of audio on that thing. And a lot of it is dead air time, but it amounts to about 30 to 40 hours of audio. And if you go through it like I have, you'll find out that these drills are going on throughout the morning. And at one point, after Flight 93 is actually downed, they call into Cheyenne Mountain and say, hey, you got to stop putting these inputs on our screens because we don't know which planes are really hijacked and which ones aren't. And the guy's so upset that he's like, I'm going to stay on the line until you finally do it, because they requested it several times. A lot of people don't understand that there was actually more hijackings that morning, according to the people at NORAD. For instance, although the 4 hijackings that we know about never emitted a hijack code, in other words, the pilot supposedly never hit the button for a hijack code, hijack codes were emitted from a Korean airliner out of Alaskan airspace. And the only reason they supposedly did not shoot that down is because it was complying when they were telling it to go from 30,000 to 20,000 feet. They thought that Delta 1989 had a bomb on board. They were following hijackings out of Canada. And in my opinion, this was to confuse the military personnel that weren't going to listen to orders that day, that were going to try to save things. So I just want to show you this Air Force One clip that'll show that, again, there was other things going on that morning. A lot of people don't know about the threat to Air Force One. Well, supposedly there was this real incredible intelligence that Air Force One was a target. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, how would you ram a hijacked plane into Air Force One? It's not possible. Exactly. And the press, in this clip right here, and hopefully the audio is going to play and everything's going to go good, starts pressing Ari Fleischer about this. And on a side note, I want you to look at the background of this. This is Fox News on 9/12, and literally in the background, it kind of is a subliminal, they have the American flag in flames. And it just struck me as very, just mind control. I mean, it's very brainwashing. You're seeing the American flag, you're seeing the flames, you're geared up for this new enemy they're showing you. And I just want to show people that, again, this was a real incredible threat, according to the White House. And it was even reported that somehow these hijackers had all the Secret Service codes. They had the codes for the president, they had the codes for weapons, all these different things, and that's why supposedly Bush went to Barksdale and Offutt that day instead of D.C. So let's play this clip really quick. Oh, come on. Of course. Hold on. I got another program that'll run it. Why Windows Media Player? Oh, of course. For some reason, my audio line is not going. What's that? What's that? I'm sorry. I should have that. I mean, I have it in the right one.
Hey, pop me down.
No, that's not it. Pretty sure that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
No, it's not.
It's supposed to be this one here, the headphones jack?
That's a headphones jack,
Oh,
yes.
okay, yeah, okay.
All right, here comes.
All right. Can people? All right, let me try it. Well, let me try to start it one more time, guys. Sorry about that. Okay. So, DuX player.
If you have a threat to Air Force One, it seems as though you're raising
an additional threat that perhaps we don't know about?
I'm sorry? Raising an additional threat that we don't know
Well,
about?
some other action that was going on. I mean, obviously the 4 planes that we know were hijacked, clearly, I mean, were no threat to Air Force One.
There was real and credible information that came into the White House, and that is the reason why the White House, Air Force One, took the actions that it took in accordance with all existing plans. And that also included, yesterday, as those who traveled with us knew, that we were not going to indicate where Air Force One was heading to.
All right, involving one of those
It's over.
planes,
Go
one
ahead,
of those
Kim.
4 planes, sorry, is that where the credible threat, or can you say, are we talking about something totally different?
You're asking me, in essence, what the source of information is. And I think the American people...
No, how
Go
have
ahead.
we accounted for those 4 planes and what their targets were? Is there, which by deduction, you would assume there is something else that we're talking about targeting Air Force One.
There
Can
was-
you make that assumption?
I'm not going to lead you any further as to speculating about what was the nature of the threat to Air Force One. But as I indicated, and I'll say it again, it was real, it was
4
credible.
planes that we have accounted for.
I'm just not going to speculate about the nature of it.
All right, so again, that's outside of hijacked planes. We also had an incident with United 23 in Newark, where the pilot refused to take off because he felt like the plane was going to be hijacked, that he had suspicious members on board. And this is in Grounded on 9/11. And so these guys didn't want to get off the plane. Everybody else got off the plane. They argued a bit. Then they did get off the plane. And then I guess they realized what was going on because they didn't stick around for their luggage. When they went through their luggage, of course, the Al-Qaeda training manuals, blueprints for buildings, they found all that. But the FBI never pursued it because they were using false identities. Yeah, it makes sense, right? They can pin the 19 hijackers, but they can't go after these other guys that were supposedly doing something that day. Now, another one that is kind of a myth. A lot of people think that, oh, Bush sat in that classroom for 7 to 15, I've heard 30 minutes before he did anything. Well, he knew about the first plane hitting before he entered the school. And a lot of people don't realize that, but this is Adam Putman, who was a congressman who was with President Bush, and again, this came out the next day, and Condoleezza Rice called him up after the first plane. So we're talking about at least a 25 to 30-minute delay in doing anything after he knows the North Tower has been attacked. So we're going to play that clip for you really quick as well. What's going on? You have to reboot after every video. Do I really? No. Come on. I just can't win with this computer, guys. Yeah, I didn't unplug anything. I'll try it one more time, and I'm hoping it'll play. Do next player.
Pat.
Well, Tracy, I have with me Congressman Adam Putnam, who is a first-term Republican from Florida, but he had the distinction of being on the plane on Air Force One with President Bush yesterday when all of this was going on. Congressman, well, tell me, what was it like, and starting from the beginning when the president first heard about it?
Well, we were in Sarasota at the elementary school awaiting the president's arrival, and we were informed that the president had a phone call from National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, and he would be delayed in his greeting. He, of course, being the Southern gentleman that he was, greeted us anyway. It took a few moments out of his time to meet the local folks. And Andy Card, his chief of staff, pulled him away and said, "Mr. President, this is a phone call you desperately need to take at this time." That was the report of the first airplane striking the World Trade Center. Obviously, a few moments later, after he had taken that call, he was with second graders when he received word of the second attack. At that point, all bets were off for the remainder of the education function. Congressman Miller and I were then...
All right, let's just stop it right there. So again, President Bush is warned right after the first plane strike. He still goes into the building. He gets the second plane strike, and he sits there for 8 minutes. Why would the Secret Service allow this? President Bush, his trip to Florida was highly publicized. Booker would have been a target for these planes supposedly in the air. It leads me to believe that somebody had some kind of prior knowledge or knew that he was safe. Now I'm going to get into something else. I get criticized a lot that our 2 movies don't bring up Israel at all, or the Mossad agents that were detained on 9/11. I'm currently working on a project where I am going to work that in. And I'm going to show you some videos right now. I'm going to show you a clip. A lot of people don't understand. Israelis were detained on that day. all right? And they were taken in from an urban moving systems company that was a front for the Israeli Mossad. Now, there's speculation whether there was 1 or 2 vans, but eventually about 60 people were rounded up. And one group of individuals was actually taping the attack before it happened. Now, several people called the police on these people. They said that they were cheering, that they had a camera set up before the first attack, and they were arrested and detained. Now, there were other reports that these guys were in a van and they had explosives headed to the George Washington Bridge. This was all pushed under the rug afterwards. Well, the interesting thing is, after they were let go, they went on a Dutch television program and actually admitted that they were there to record the event. And I'm going to play that clip for you right now. Let's see what we got here. That's the van right there. And that's one of the officers that detained him.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks.
Now, how does that happen? How are they knowing to document the event? There were people in Israel who were warning us of an attack, yet these guys get detained. A lot of agents were upset that they were let go and said that, why weren't these guys charged with espionage? Now, Fox News, of all programs, actually ran a 4-part series with Carl Cameron and Britt Hume, where they exposed a massive Israeli spy ring within the United States. And I'm going to play, not the whole thing, but I clipped together about 12 minutes. I'll probably run through about 5 of it. And it goes into not only the art students' rings, but Amdocs and Comverse. And basically, Amdocs is a company that deals in communications. If you email somebody, if you make a phone call, it goes through Amdocs. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're tapping your phone and they're listening to everything you say, but they do have a record of who you're calling. And the investigation into this is just incredible. They find out that not only is there a spy ring, but they've infiltrated the military, members of the FBI, members of law enforcement. I'll let the clip speak for itself. So let me find Israel compressed. I think this is it. And DivX player. Oh, come on. I'll get it to play, guys. Let's see what we got here. Oh, come on. I can't win.
Right-click on the file and open with.
Yeah. No, I did that with DivX and it wouldn't do it in Windows. For some reason, my Windows player just wants to act up today. Let me see. Come on. Play it.
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States. But investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, evidence linking these Israelis to 911 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information.
Let me pause it there. Now, it's classified information. Bob Graham was the head of the House Senate Intelligence Committee with a guy named Porter Goss. Now, these guys headed up the congressional investigation that had 22, I believe it was 22 or 27 redacted pages, all blacked out, okay? Now, what's interesting about that is that he went on PBS's Frontline, I believe, right after the report, and he said that there were foreign governments that were involved in 9/11, and not only in the funding, but the actual operation, and that it would be classified for 20 to 30 years. Well, why do we have the 9/11 Commission then? If they were just going to classify this stuff for 20 to 30 years, and you actually have him admitting that on camera, it's amazing to me that more people don't understand that this is an international intelligence op. I don't believe that Israel was the only one behind it. I don't think they could make NORAD stand down. I do understand they have dual citizens in the United States. But you have to use the Pakistani ISI to set up the hijackers through funding. That's a chapter in Loose Change Final Cut. To me, it's an international intelligence op. The CIA, the ISI, the Mossad, MI5, at certain echelons in the upper levels, they all work together. So I'm gonna play a little bit more of this, and then we're gonna actually watch the War Games chapter from the Final Cut.
Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States. Investigators from numerous government agencies are part of a working group that's been compiling evidence since the mid-90s. These documents detail hundreds of incidents in cities and towns across the country that investigators say, quote, may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. The first part of the investigation focuses on Israelis who say they are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. They repeatedly made contact with U.S. government personnel, the report says, by saying they wanted to sell cheap art or handiwork. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases, the DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel. The majority of those questioned, quote, stated they serve policies. Why would Israelis spy in and on the U.S.? A General Accounting Office investigation referred to Israel as Country A and said, quote, according to a U.S. intelligence agency, the government of Country A conducts the most aggressive espionage operation against the U.S. of any U.S. ally.
So there you go. I mean, literally, they're coming out with classified documents. They're showing them to the American public. They're showing that Israel runs espionage against us. And the last person that we convicted on this was, I believe, in the late 80s, early 90s. On a final note, if you've ever watched Robert Wright, who was an FBI agent who tried to come out before 9/11 and was reprimanded, and then tried to come out after 9/11 with Barry Carmody and others. He was represented by David Shippers, who was one of the lead lawyers to impeach Clinton, Larry Klayman of Judicial Watch. They mentioned Israel several times and mentioned that there was stuff going on there and that their investigations were pulled. And even Larry Klayman mentioned Pollard as an Israeli spy that was caught in the country. So this isn't me saying it. This is FBI agents. This is Judicial Watch. This is Fox News. So again, the mainstream media is actually full of truths if you look for them, and you've got to look pretty hard. So with that, I want to play our War Games chapter from Loose Change Final Cut. And if we have any time after that, I'd love to take your questions or comments. So can we cue that up? All right, excellent. And by the way, if you're looking for something to do, there's so many organizations out there. I had 2 young guys come from Michigan State. They drove here today, came over to me, and they said, Jason, what can I do? And they hadn't even seen my films. And I said, well, you can become the media. Oh, yeah, you got it. There you go. You can become the media. At this point, it's literally $200 to get yourself a little DV cam that you can hold in your hand and go ask a question. And I'm just so impressed with what We Are Change has done recently. I don't know if anybody's caught the Bill Clinton confrontations, but they're plentiful and they're all over the place. And just a couple weeks ago on ABC News, he was up there pandering for his wife Hillary, and a bunch of people were yelling about the Bilderberg Group. Now, most of you here know what the Bilderberg Group is. It's a once-a-year meeting with the upper echelons of the elite around the world, pretty much deciding our fate. And Bill Clinton was reported to have gone by WorldNet Daily in '99. There was never any real confirmation from himself. Finally, he acknowledges these people, and he says, if I answer your question, will you leave? And he's very angry that they're asking, but he's finally going to say it. And he says, yeah, I went in '99. Vernon Jordan wanted me to go. He brought me in, but I didn't set any policy. They set the policy without me there. and I was only there talking to Europeans about what was going to happen to Russia. So we've went from a place that denied Bilderberg exists to a place where Bilderberg exists to a place where Bilderberg exists and our president goes there to a place where Bilderberg exists, our president goes there, and they set policy. So that to me is huge. I wish millions of people would watch this, millions of people knew this. Unfortunately, I think the YouTube count is something in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. But everybody out there, even if you don't want to become the media, go to these things, become an activist, you can email that link to your friends, your families, your coworkers, and just kind of open them up to this stuff. So again, the tools are plentiful. It's up to you whether you want to do this. It's the will of you. I mean, the information's there. The technology's there. But are you going to be there? Do you have the guts to sit your kids down and say, we're going to watch Loose Change today? Easter just happened, Thanksgiving was before that. What'd you do? You watched the football game? Did you watch NCAA basketball? To me, when I'm in these situations, I just can't shut up. I was over at my girlfriend's family. They're not so fond of what I do. A lot of people I hadn't met before, but I'm not afraid to say, George Bush and his family, they made their money laundering money for the Nazis from the 30s to the early 50s. Before and after the Nazis were in power. Averell Harriman Banking Corporation, Union Banking. A few people have talked about that. I know Dave talked about it in his speech. But to me, you just can't have that fear. You have to tell these people that. And whether they laugh in your face or they just can't accept it, everybody's got wireless internet now. And you can just bring it up. Bring up the documents. Bring up the London Guardian article from 3 years ago when they confirmed, John Buchanan and his National Archive papers. I mean, again, the information is out there, so it's really up to us. I mean, a lot of people ask me again, well, what's next for the 9/11 Truth Movement? Well, what's next is, again, up to us. I see when this administration leaves office that probably a lot more lie-hop stuff will come out, a lot more about Able Danger will come out, a lot more about the hijackers training in U.S. bases, but don't fool yourself. There won't be anything coming out about the controlled demolition of 1 and 2. And we're 6.5 years later, and the NIST report on Building 7 is still not out. And if you actually listened to Richard Gage and the members of NIST's phone call from a couple months ago where they were discussing, the report on Building 7, they're not even looking at floors 8 below, okay? The collapse must have happened from 9 and up. So they're not even allowed to look at those floors, and it was just total garbage. They're talking about, oh, well, the building must have weakened by fire, and I actually had some more clips where you can literally see the south face of Building 7, okay, where supposedly this big scoop is out, where the big damage is, after one of the buildings has fallen, and the glass isn't even blown out. The glass isn't even blown out. Then they run up to the lobby. This is in the final cut, folks. You can watch it yourself. They run into the lobby. 25% of the building isn't scooped up like popular mechanics would have us believe. But whenever I talk to somebody who's uninitiated, what's the first thing they say to me? Oh, popular mechanics debunked all that stuff. I laugh when I hear that, but it's not funny. These guys are very, very slick. For instance, I don't know how many of you caught the History Channel piece about us this summer. 9/11 conspiracy, fact or fiction. The tactic they used there was ingenious in my opinion. What did they do? Well, they introduced the cast of characters in the first segment. And the cast of characters is myself, the other 2 filmmakers, Alex Jones, Jim Fetzer, and others. And they don't refer to us as investigators or journalists or independent filmmakers. We're all conspiracy theorists right off the bat. Okay? Go to commercial. They come back from commercial. What is the first conspiracy theory that they debunk? The Jews did 9/11. Like we're going to take a broad category of an ethnic race and say that they did 9/11. Not one of us was on camera saying the Jews did 9/11, but they harped on it for 10 minutes, and the average uninitiated person who doesn't know anything about the 9/11 Truth Movement, doesn't know anything about my film, thinks to themselves, oh, they're all anti-Semitic. Oh, they think the Jews do everything. Instead of looking at, hijackers training at U.S. bases, the Mossad involvement I just showed you right there, the fact that Fox News is reporting that there's an Israeli spy ring in the United States. They don't put that on there. And, the media is good. They've got most people wrapped up, and that's why, I'm imploring all you people out there that can do a radio show. I do a radio show for GCN. I do it 5 nights a week. I don't get paid for it. I do it because I love it, because I want to talk to people. By the way, I'm on at 8 to 9 Eastern, so that's That's 5 to 6 here, but you should tune in. I'm on stream 4 or something like that. I'm pretty relegated, but you know, I keep with the activists. You know, I have student scholars for 9/11 Truth on all the time, and those guys are great. They've gotten everybody from Obama to Ron Paul to comment on 9/11 Truth, and they're not quitting. They're having a great symposium this May with people like Daniel Hopsicker and Sander Hicks, and you know, I don't see eye to eye with all those people, but I don't see eye to eye with David Ray Griffin on everything either, and he was a script consultant on my movie. So, you know, all we have to do is see eye to eye on the fact we're being lied about 9/11, and that we need a new independent investigation, and that basically we need to hold people accountable for what happened. Everybody who was involved somehow and was negligent or was supposedly covering up incompetence got promoted. You know, they gave George Tenet the Medal of Honor, the head of the CIA at the time. I mean, that's a joke to me. It's a sick joke. You know, how is the head of the CIA going to get the Medal of Honor after the worst terrorist attack in the United States history? Oh, we're not ready to go yet, are we? No? Okay. I'll rant a little bit more. You got it. No, I'm improving. No, I don't play the guitar. Thank you. It is in Keene, New Hampshire. And like I said, these guys are just two young guys. I mean, they're not even 21 yet. They can't even drink. And they've probably interviewed and gotten more relevant information from politicians than Tom Brokaw. You know, I mean, literally. I mean, they're incredible kids. They went there for communications. They said, hey, you know, we're in New Hampshire. A lot of people are going to pander to us this year for the primaries. Let's do something. And they did. And, you know, Aaron Russo, before his passing, he got me press passes into the, the debates over the summer, the Republican debates. And I got to confront Tommy Thompson, who was the ex-head of Health and Human Services, on the microchip and biometrics. If you don't know, in 2004, while he was the head of Health and Human Services, the FDA actually approved the microchip for human use. This is a small, size of a grain of rice RFID chip that goes into your skin. Some people are already taking it through a hypodermic needle, no less. And he went on television saying it was the best thing since breakfast, and he was going to take one himself. So I went up to Tommy and I said, you know, Tommy, did you take a chip? And he's like, no, I didn't take a chip, but you know, you don't really have to take one. You can put it in a bracelet on a baby, or you know, it's great for military inventory. Well, they're not going to put it in a bomb, folks, or a gun. They're going to put it in a person. That's inventory to them. It's sick. And you know, I pegged Gilmore on the Pakistani connection. I pegged just about everybody on the Pakistani connection. I pegged Brownback, Gilmore, Tommy Thompson, and I think one other individual. It's all online. I think you get it at restoretherepublic.com. It's still up there. And you know, when I bring up the Pakistani ISI connection and the $100,000 wire, no one denies it. They all know about it. And I asked Brownback about it, whether it was in the 27 redacted pages of the congressional report, and he's like, well, I really can't comment on that. And I'm like, well, if bin Laden is supposedly in Pakistan, and Pakistan helped fund the attacks at the ring of 100 grand, supposedly the attacks, according to the 9/11 Commission, only cost $500,000, that's 1/5 of the funding right there, why aren't they an enemy? And oh, that's not how we do things. You know, they're in the Wahhabist sects. And I'm like, but it's a state sponsor. We're not talking about Wahhabi sect. We're talking about their intelligence service wiring that money. Oh, well, that's not how we do things. And then other guys would be like, well, Pakistan is an enemy. And in Loose Change Final Cut, when we bring that up, Thomas Keene, who was the co-chair of the commission, says, I don't know anything about that $100,000 wire transfer, but Pakistan's the most dangerous country in the world. And he says it just like that. I mean, he literally trails off quickly and says, Pakistan's the most dangerous country in the world. And we all know that's a joke. I mean, in my opinion, they're no friend to us, but they're far from the most dangerous country in the world. And it's just amazing to me, you know, if you were here for G. Edward Griffin's speech last night, these guys deny for years and years and years, and then finally when it's common knowledge, you know, they'll say they were the savior behind the scenes. I was trying to get that information out to the American people. You know, Bob Graham, in this ISI connection, for instance, he's having breakfast with the head of the ISI on the morning of 9/11, and in the 2 weeks prior, he met with him dozens of times. He admitted to Philly 9/11 Truth. He really wasn't admitting. He was just speaking, you know, not realizing what he was saying, I guess, and saying, yeah, you know, General Mahmoud Ahmed's job was actually to play nice with the Taliban, so he had all these contacts, and we happened to be having breakfast on the morning of 9/11, and one of the gentlemen asked about the $100,000 wire transfer. Oh, I don't know anything about that. I only headed the congressional report with Porter Goss, who would later become the head of the CIA, and also having breakfast with General Mahmoud Ahmed on that morning. But if you take a look closer at that congressional investigation, Nancy Pelosi was the lead Democrat. And I remember, about 2.5 years ago when all these people were telling me, oh, the Democrats are coming into office, we're getting out of Iraq, there's going to be impeachment. And I'm like, not with Nancy Pelosi at the helm. That's not going to happen. And then, within a week, people realized she swore herself in, even mentioned Novus Ordo Seclorum in her acceptance speech, and immediately said that impeachment's off the table. What do you mean impeachment's off the table? I thought that if, the executive branch committed a crime, that we could charge them with that crime. I mean, impeachment really doesn't mean anything except we're going to have a trial and see what or what they didn't do. But when you have a commission like the 9/11 Commission that allows George Bush and Dick Cheney to testify together, not under oath, in a closed setting with no video camera and no stenographer and no record of what they said, I don't know what we expect. I mean, we have to hold these guys accountable. I just can't believe that more people aren't for a new 9/11 investigation. And I mean an independent investigation. I don't want to see Congress doing this. I don't want to see the Senate doing this. I want to see the family members, quite frankly. I want to see Donna Marsh O'Connor and the Jersey Girls asking the tough questions, because they've got them. Donna Marsh O'Connor's on C-SPAN almost in tears saying, we had to fight tooth and nail just to get the 9/11 Commission, and then they didn't even ask or answer 70+% of our questions. 70+%? Willie will tell you. I saw him at, I get these hearings all the time, and he's always in the background. He was there. They answer your questions, Willie? Exactly. And, a lot of people like to attack Willie. They say, oh, well, Willie Rodriguez is making up his story. There's no one to back it up. Well, if you came to the Texas conference, his supervisor, Anthony Santamacia, was here, told the same exact story. If you watch Loose Change Final Cut, Marlene Cruz was there. She tells the same exact story. Brian Reeves, who was in the lobby of the World Trade Center, got blown up in the lobby of the World Trade Center, and he tells the same exact story. In Loose Change Final Cut, we have John Schroeder, a firefighter, one of the first firefighters on the scene. I'm sure you all watched 9/11, 6 months after the attacks, the Naudet brothers film. Well, he's in that. He's one of the first guys in the lobby when the whole lobby's blown out, and he's looking around, and he can't believe it. And when we talked to him, he's like, yeah, it looked like a bomb had gone off in the lobby. He's like, we were down there for about 5 minutes after the plane had actually hit, and then the elevators exploded. So wait, the jet fuel waited 10, 15 minutes to go down 1,000+ feet and then blow out after the lobby was already blown up? Yeah, that makes sense. So, you got to wonder if they're ever going to answer these questions. And, I pray to God they do, because, to me, this is the issue. Our entire foreign and domestic policy are still based on what the government and the media alike have told us about 9/11, the several different official versions, because they're out there. There's no one official version at this point. But, that's why we have Patriot Acts 1 and 2, parts of 3 passed. That's why we have the Military Commissions Act that was passed. That's why we have the end of habeas corpus in that bill. The right to face your accuser is a pretty essential right. It predates the Constitution and Bill of Rights by quite some time. It was actually put into place with the Magna Carta back in 1215. So, I don't want to be at the wrong end of a military tribunal, or still nothing, guys. All right, at the wrong end of a military tribunal, or the decision of basically a decision to throw me in prison without a jury of my peers. It's so un-American to me. It's unbelievable, and this country has really just slid from what I grew up believing in anyway. I was one of those guys that I loved my country. I thought I could do no wrong, Pledge of Allegiance all the way. After the attacks, I might have had my question, but, I started watching the news and I got wrapped up into it, and I was just like, we better go get these guys. I almost joined the military. I came really close. I'd almost joined the National Guard the year before with my buddy, one of my really close friends, Jason D'Onofrio, and I'd even went and taken the ASVAB test with him, and I was all geared up to do it, and thank God my stepfather basically threw the recruiter out and said there's no way he's going to do it. But my friend Jason, he ended up having to go to Iraq, National Guard person out of New York, you know. He went to Iraq, he spent over 6 months there, he got blown up in a tank, lost his hearing in one ear. I mean, you know, he thought he was going to be protecting the state. That's what I thought I was going to be doing it too. And, you know, there's plenty of National Guardsmen still over there. And you better believe they want to go into Iran. They would love to have that big section of Eurasia. You know, look at it on a map. Those who haven't really looked at the Middle East on a map yet, look, Afghanistan's on one side, Iraq's on the other, Saudi Arabia is below, and we're big buddies with them. Iran is the domino that needs to fall in that region for them really to put together, in my opinion, a Eurasian union that they control. You know, because this is all about consolidation of power, and they'll do it through consent or conquest. They prefer consent, but sometimes to get that consent, they need a little bit of conquest, and that's what 9/11 is to me. You know, that's why, you know, you had talking heads all over the place saying, oh, we're going to lose some of our rights, but it's okay because we need the security. I had a terrorism expert the next day saying, well, what the real problem is that CIA and intelligence agents in this country aren't allowed to pose as the media. We need them to pose as the media. And I was just like, wow, that blows me away. But it shouldn't have blown me away because CNN reported in 2000 that they actually had 4 CIA agents running one of their divisions. I look it up, CNN, CIA agents caught, but they were just interns. They weren't doing anything. They didn't have, yeah, they didn't have any pull. They just happened to be working for the CIA in that department. So, I mean, the line has thinned so much between the media and the government at this point that even people like Lou Dobbs, who has a nightly show on CNN, is reporting about the New World Order. Yeah, just type in New World Order, Lou Dobbs. He did a great piece on it. I saw him on Book TV about a month ago, and a woman asked him, she said, well, you know, what is it, Lou? Why can't the Democrats and the Republicans seem to work together so that we can actually get some of this good legislation passed? And he laughed, and he said, they're working great together. They're just not working for me and you. He's like, they work for the corporate masters out there. And, you know, I couldn't believe it, but he was just on Alex Jones, and he seems to be pretty hip to a lot of things. I wish Olbermann would get on board. He's on, I guess, the other side, you know, left-right paradigm that's really not there. But it just shocks me how so many big stories these days just fall through the cracks. You hear about them once and then never again. For instance, Olbermann had a man from AT&T on, and his job was to basically hardline servers into different rooms for records. And he said that he hardlined into the secret room where all communications went through the National Security Agency. Now he's suing them. It was thrown out of federal court, criminal court. He wasn't allowed to do anything. And he's currently trying to have a lawsuit against them. Great piece, 8 minutes long. Never saw it in any newspapers. Never saw a follow-up. Never saw it on actual NBC. Only saw it on MSNBC. And it's not talked about. You know, on the issue I talked about the chip earlier. Well, how many people know that the Mexican government is now proposing that all people who want to legally come in from Guatemala and the rest of South America no longer need a passport, they need a biochip? That's CNN, Lou Dobbs. Okay? What's going on here? Why would you want to chip a human being to travel? And what really scares me about that is that if we do have a North American Union, and I believe we will eventually, you know, Mexico, Canada, and ourselves will be amalgamated into one country, and soon enough, if you want to come into, you know, the North American Union or whatever they call it, you'll have to take a chip. And then other nations, such as the ones in Europe, are going to say, well, if you want to come here, you're going to have to take a chip too. You got it? 5? I only have 5 minutes left? Oh, of course I do. Yeah? Yeah, I guess you're just going to have to check out. If you guys haven't seen Loose Change Final Cut, I'm really sorry that they couldn't get this going. But, you know, I have the video back there. I guess they're going to play one on a computer around here so you can get a feel for it. But I guess I'll try to sum up the War Games chapter that you're not watching. Everybody came out basically in the days after 9/11, and they said, oh, we never knew of a plan for hijacked airliners to go into buildings. We never thought of anything like that. My administration, the administration before that, George Bush said it a couple times. Condi Rice got on TV, and she said it as well. And then you find out in June 1st and 2nd of 2001, they ran a drill called Amalgam Virgo. And you can get the PDF file online. And literally, they ran a hijacking of a commercial airliner from Alaska into the Capitol building. Okay? Now, the second part of Amalgam Virgo that was written down, planned out, but supposedly never carried out because it was to take place after 9/11 was FBI agents were going to hijack real planes with a flight and crew on deck and land them into secure locations. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then you find out on the morning of 9/11, they're running Northern Vigilance, Vigilant Guardian, Global Guardian, and other war games of hijacked airliners going in and out of radar at the same exact time that hijacked airliners are going in and out of radar. And Global Guardian was such a big exercise. It was one of those mass Armageddon exercises that you could see where they might have had a credible threat against Air Force One. It was cruise missile attacks, it was dirty bombs, it was all sorts of things. On top of that, the FBI was running another drill that sent all of their top personnel across the country in California. So 50 of the top FBI personnel who would have normally been on the East Coast to gather evidence and try to find the perpetrators weren't even there. And they had no way of getting across the country, and they were delayed several days. I mean, the cover-up is just unbelievable, folks. And, you know, again, unfortunately, I only got to show you just a few clips because I thought we were going to be able to play the chapter. But go look into this stuff yourself, become educated on it, and then become the media or share it with your family. Do something. Join 9/11 Truth LA. I mean, if you're out here in California, there's no excuse not to be in that group. We Are Change LA is here, and they're great. If you didn't see them on the Bill Maher show, they did an amazing thing. They penetrated the mainstream media. Fox News, NBC News, ABC News, all had to report on them for them just going to a television show and confronting a television host on live TV. Anybody can do it. You know, we might not be able to do it for much longer, so now's the time. In closing, I'm going to be in D.C. on September 11th this year. I've been in New York City the past 3 years. The first year I was there in 2005, it was literally me, Dylan, and Corey with 50 DVDs of Loose Change, the original, handing them out to people. I think Wing TV was there as well. They were the only other people that were hip to 9/11 Truth at all. To the next year, in 2006, having 2,000 people in my T-shirt handing out 10,000 copies of Loose Change. And then we had 1,000 people in New York City last year when it wasn't on a weekend and it was pouring rain. I hope and pray that we can get a very, very large number to come to D.C. this year and just say enough is enough. We want a real investigation. We want accountability again. We want checks and balances. And we want a government for and by the people. Thank you.
Hold on. No. Yeah, we have to wrap it up because I tell you what, folks, next door to us is a church group. As some of you heard, they had a loud music, and they've been here for 3 months every week, and so we made a friendly agreement that they're going to lower the music for until 6 o'clock so that we can have the peace we need for you guys to listen to our speakers. So, but our speakers are available afterwards. You know, you can around the pool, nice weather, trees, and you know, ask more time on the tables. But the music will be starting very soon. So before we wrap up, I want to mention to you that those of you who are interested in more health or freedom-oriented events, the Orange County Health and Wellness Expo, which is co-sponsored by Robin Jones of Living Temple, on Saturday, April 19th in Irvine will be going on. They got 8 amazing keynote speakers, 60 exciting vendors and booths, and details about healthexpooc.com or thelivingtemple.com. Again, the websites are healthexpooc.com, thelivingtemple.com. Again, the conference, folks, you can get the CDs of them, of all the speakers out there. $10 per one speaker, $35 for 5, $75 for all the 13 speakers, including Ed Griffin, available. You can order them at the front desk. We mail them to you if you don't have them all there. And you can order DVDs as a video online, where we give you a code. You go to the website. You can watch the DVD, the video of the conference as many times as you want from your computer, home-based computer or laptop. So anyhow, that's it. So folks, I want to thank you all for coming. And remember this. You heard all this information, right? go home, do something with it. Take it to your friends, neighbors, co-workers, share them the information, okay? And tomorrow, folks, we're going to be going on 9 to 5, the class on how to prosper in upcoming hard times. Will be going on from 9 to 5. You'll be someplace in one of these rooms out here. I don't know which one, but when you come down, you see at the lobby. I hope more of you will decide to be there because, folks, America, as you heard, is not only headed for some very difficult times as far as the government corruption goes and criminality, which is the issue, but also the Federal Reserve System is going to bring America to its knees. They've been doing it for a while. They've been delaying it, and they've been delaying it. And the more they delay it, the inevitable, that crash will be that much harder. So hope you'll be there tomorrow with us to prepare. Again, remember, all the conferences, whether you didn't make the class Friday or tomorrow Monday, only to you guys who are here is available for half price. All of it is available if you want to get it half price. Everybody else who wasn't here, they have to get paid pretty much basically full price for this conference on video. But those of you live can get half price. So with that, I'm going to thank you all for coming. I look forward to seeing you again next year. Call us, folks, if you want to be an activist. Call us in January, early January, and we'll mail you these brochures. We always have this conference in this area of Irvine, the Newport Beach area, about in mid to late March like this. So get in touch with us. Let us know you're an activist. We get the brochures out to you. We email it out to you. Let us know, folks. And together, folks, let's have you, each of you, be free, and let's work together and have America be free again. Thank you for coming, everybody.